Hey, my name's Lisa Figueroa. I'm a board certified criminal defense attorney in Central Florida. I try a lot of cases and I realize that there are a lot of jurors out there that are misinformed and people in the general public about what goes on, what should go on, what shouldn't go on, and a lot of injustices that just go unnoticed. So I want to take some time and cover some high profile cases you may have seen and heard about, give you my take on them, and also I welcome any questions or any input from you guys as we take this journey together. So today we're going to talk about this David the Rapper case that's been going all over the news. As some of you have probably already heard, a pretty famous upcoming rapper and had been in the media and spotlight, and all of a sudden recently they've discovered human remains in the trunk of a vehicle registered to him. So a lot of questions are looming. Apparently a show was canceled, presumably because of this. And so a lot of the people I've spoken with have asked me some questions, and I want to give you some answers about my thoughts on this. Some people ask, why hasn't David been arrested? Well, at this point, the police are working on developing enough probable cause so that they can make an arrest. And that's going to require a lot of investigation, a lot of surveillance, looking into witnesses, talking to people, conducting searches of homes, sometimes cell phones, cell tower records. There are a lot of things that would have to be explored before it can be determined who is actually responsible for this. So there's a lot of questions that are still unknown and unanswered. Some of them might be known to the police and not yet to the public, but at the same time, no arrest has been made because there's not sufficient grounds to do that yet. Another question I got is, what are the possible charges? Well, let's take a look at some of the things that we've heard. Now, again, this is just, some of it may be speculation, some of the things are things that are going around the internet. But from what we've heard is we have a singer who, in a vehicle registered to him in an abandoned area, the vehicle was found and then it was towed to an impound yard. At the impound yard, eventually it's discovered that there's human remains. There's questions about whether or not the odor that was detected at the tow yard was detected when it was moved, or how long it had been there, who had left it there. There's just a lot of gaps. So as far as what charges, it's going to depend on what information is ultimately discovered. Is this a situation where someone was found already injured or deceased and then it was just covered up? Is there any evidence that the person was abused in any way, whether it was sexually or physically, depending on any autopsy results, if an autopsy is conducted? Usually there is. Is there any toxicology reports, which would mean that there are certain kind of drugs or poisons in the person's system? Cell phone records of the victim as well as the individuals that may have had any contact with her. So there are a lot of things that still have to be explored, and the charges could range anywhere up to homicide, whether it's premeditated or not. Again, we would need to know more facts for that, or is it just interference with an investigation? There's just still too many unknown pieces to determine that, but we will see. Another question was, how does the age of the victim affect the charges? Well, that's going to depend. As far as homicide itself, now I am a criminal defense attorney in Florida, and the laws in every state are different. But generally speaking, the age of the victim, it does not change the type of charge if it's a murder charge or a homicide charge. Whether it's manslaughter, all of that, the age of the victim doesn't make it necessarily more egregious in terms of the sentence, at least not in Florida. However, if there was any kind of sexual misconduct, if there was any kind of sexual abuse or violation of this female victim, then that could add additional charges, which would matter her age. Someone asked me whether the parents could be charged. And again, it just depends. How much did the parents know? How quickly after the child was missing was it reported? Did they have any kind of involvement in her disappearance? And that would be hard to believe and fathom. I've seen a few of the reports, and the family is, this is a grave loss for any family. So, but those are things that police are always going to look into to make sure that there's not any kind of foul play or someone that knew the victim had any involvement in this. But generally, the parent wouldn't be involved, but they always could be if the facts do reveal that there was something there. Now, what would a defense lawyer say in this situation? I have some grave concerns that this vehicle, if this person who is a well-known artist is at the peak of his rise in the music industry, and then all of a sudden has a vehicle registered to him, that he would kill someone and then just leave it in the trunk of his car and then just leave it abandoned. It just kind of makes me wonder. It doesn't make sense. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. Sometimes homicides don't make sense. Sometimes people do things in the heat of the moment and they don't think it through. But I find that really hard to believe, and it's more likely that someone else is involved. And so it's not surprising to me that the singer is not making any comment. I would not advise my client to give any statement at this point, because we're going to be doing our best to try to find out and get to the bottom of this, of what really happened. And unfortunately, right now, it looks like it's pointing to him. But it's a little too obvious and therefore a little suspicious to me. Now, if someone were to be arrested for this type of charge, this is not a charge that is typically one where you would automatically get a bond. So the person would either be required to pay an extremely high bond. In Florida, they would not be entitled to a bond. An attorney would have to request a bond hearing, and then at a bond hearing, they would have to prove the guilt of the accused, almost like a mini trial at a bond hearing. And that's the way the law is here in Florida. In California or other states, they may do it differently. But typically, if this ends up being charged with some sort of homicide or murder, it is not an offense that is usually a bondable offense. But again, a lot of this is going to be driven by the facts specific to the case and then the person who's ultimately accused. The question was posed whether or not I think that the person's innocent. I take every case like my client could be innocent. And I also look at the facts about whether or not this even makes sense, whether or not this can be proven, because God forbid that were to happen to me or that someone I loved, would I want just this level of evidence to be the only thing that could convict them and put them behind bars? And potentially in this kind of situation, it could be the death penalty. So it is very important that the evidence be concrete, that it be beyond a reasonable doubt, that they have sufficient. And so as a defense attorney, we're going to look at it. Where are they getting their sources? There's a lot circulating about him having songs that make references to a girl of that same name. I have questions about where is that coming from? What is the source of that? Who put that out? Did he know the person? Is that the only person with that name? So is it a coincidence? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. And should that be enough, right? These are all the kinds of things that have to be looked at. And I give all my clients the benefit of the doubt. And I'm always going to double check everything that the police are doing, because especially nowadays with a lot of AI and what you see on social media, it is very difficult to determine what is real and what is false. And so for someone to be convicted based on false information, or haters out there that just have a problem with what you're doing, it's really threatening of justice and our criminal justice system when someone's life and freedom is on the line. And we really need to scrutinize the things that are put out there. So those are all the questions that I have for today. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I will respond to them. And as more information starts coming out, I'll hop back on here and upload another video to give you guys my take on that.